The road to the ranch stretched long and empty, its dust rising with every weak step Clara took. The late afternoon sun hung low, casting a harsh orange glow over the open land, but it offered no warmth. Clara's stomach ached with hunger, a dull, constant pain she had learned to ignore. In her arms, her young son Daniel slept restlessly, his small body far too light for a child his age. Each breath he took felt fragile, as if the wind itself might steal it away. Clara paused near a broken fence, gathering what little strength she had left. She had walked since dawn, stopping only when Daniel cried from hunger or exhaustion. Every farmhouse she had passed before this one had been silent, doors closed, windows dark. Pride had kept her going longer than sense. She had promised herself she would never beg. She would work. She would earn every bite. But now, standing before the wide ranch land, she knew this was her last chance before nightfall. Beyond the fence, a man worked alone near the barn, his movements slow and practiced. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a hat pulled low over his eyes. His clothes were worn but clean, and his hands were strong, shaped by years of hard labor. Clara watched him for a moment, fear tightening her chest. Men like him had turned her away before, not cruelly, but firmly, as if hunger were an inconvenience they couldn't afford to notice. Still, she stepped forward. "Sir," Clara called out, her voice barely carrying across the open space. The man stopped and turned. His eyes settled on her, sharp but not unkind. He didn't speak at first. He simply watched as she shifted Daniel's weight in her arms, trying to soothe him without waking him fully. "I can work," she said quickly, words tumbling over each other. "I'll do anything. Clean stalls, cook, wash clothes. I don't need pay. Just bread." For a moment, only the sound of cattle lowing in the distance filled the air. Clara felt exposed, as if every hardship she had endured was written across her face. Sleepless nights, empty meals, the long road traveled alone. She tightened her grip on Daniel, terrified the man would send them away. The rancher walked closer, boots crunching softly against the dirt. Up close, Clara saw the lines etched into his face, marks left by sun, wind, and years of responsibility. His gaze dropped briefly to Daniel, noting the child's thin arms and pale skin. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps, or memory. "How old is he?" the rancher asked. "3, Clara replied, though Daniel looked younger. Shame burned her throat as she said it. The rancher nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. He glanced back toward the house, then at the field stretching endlessly beyond it. Clara waited, her heart pounding, preparing herself for rejection. "I didn't come to beg," she added softly. "I just need a chance." The rancher exhaled, a deep breath that carried the weight of unspoken thoughts. He rested one hand on the fence, eyes still on the child. The silence felt heavy, but not empty. Clara sensed that this moment, this single decision, would change everything, one way or another. And as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the rancher finally spoke, his voice calm but firm, setting the stage for a choice that would test both hunger and pride. The rancher studied Clara for a long moment after her words faded into the quiet air. The wind tugged at her hair, and Daniel stirred against her chest, letting out a weak whimper. Instinctively, she rocked him, whispering soft reassurances, though her own heart raced with fear. She had said all she could. Now everything depended on the man standing before her. The rancher straightened, his hand still resting on the fence. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara," she replied, surprised by the gentleness in his voice. He nodded. "I'm Matthew." He hesitated, then glanced again at Daniel. "And the boy?" "Daniel." Matthew removed his hat, holding it loosely in his hands. The simple gesture caught Clara off guard. Most people never bothered to learn names when they intended to turn you away. He rubbed the back of his neck, as if choosing his words carefully. "You said you want to work for bread," he said slowly. "Yes, sir. I will," Clara answered at once. "I'm strong. I won't be a burden." Matthew shook his head, a faint frown creasing his brow. "I don't doubt that, but I won't buy your dignity with food." Clara blinked, unsure she had heard him correctly. "I don't understand." He stepped aside and opened the gate, the wood groaning softly. "Come inside," he said. "Both of you." Her feet felt rooted to the ground. Suspicion rose alongside hope. "Sir, I don't want charity." Matthew met her gaze directly. "This isn't charity. This is decency." He led the way toward the house, giving her time to follow. Clara crossed the threshold of the gate with shaking legs, half expecting him to change his mind. But he didn't look back. He walked with quiet certainty, as if this decision had already been made long ago. Inside the ranch house, the air was warm and smelled of herbs and meat. A pot simmered gently on the stove, its rich aroma nearly bringing Clara to her knees. Her stomach clenched painfully, reminding her how long it had been since she'd eaten a real meal. Matthew pulled out a chair at the small wooden table. "Sit," he said. "The stew's been on since noon." Clara lowered herself carefully, adjusting Daniel in her arms. He woke fully now, his eyes widening at the unfamiliar room. Matthew placed a bowl in front of her, then another beside it, filled to the brim. "For him," Matthew said. "You first, though. He needs you strong." Tears blurred Clara's vision. She hadn't cried in weeks, there had been no room for it, but now they spilled freely. "Thank you," she whispered, the words too small for what she felt. Matthew turned away, pretending to busy himself with the stove. "Eat," he said gruffly. "We'll talk after." Clara lifted the spoon with trembling fingers. The first bite was almost overwhelming, warm, filling, real. She fed Daniel carefully, watching color slowly return to his face. Each swallow felt like a promise, though she didn't yet know of what. As they ate, Clara realized something had shifted. This wasn't just a meal. It was a pause in the long struggle, a moment of safety she had nearly forgotten was possible. And as Matthew finally sat across from her, ready to listen, Clara sensed that this ranch might become more than just a place they passed through. It might be the beginning of something entirely new. The morning sun spilled softly through the windows, casting golden stripes across the wooden floorboards of the ranch house. Clara stirred from a light sleep, Daniel still curled against her, breathing steady and calm for the first time in days. She blinked, momentarily disoriented, before memories of the past weeks, the endless walking, the gnawing hunger, the helplessness, rushed back. But here, in this warm room, with the soft scent of wood and stew lingering in the air, she felt a fragile thread of hope she hadn't dared to feel in a long time. Matthew moved quietly in the kitchen, tending to a small fire. He glanced at her over his shoulder, offering a small nod. "Morning," he said simply. There was no hint of judgment, only a quiet acknowledgement. Clara swallowed, still unsure if she deserved the kindness he had already shown, and finally whispered, "Morning." After breakfast, the three of them stepped outside. The ranch stretched wide and open, fields of gold and green swaying in the early light. Daniel squealed and ran ahead, chasing the birds that flitted across the fence line, his laughter breaking the heavy weight that had settled on Clara's chest for so long. She watched him, tears threatening to spill again, but these were tears of relief, not despair. Matthew leaned on the fence, observing her quietly. "You're strong," he said. "But you've been carrying more than you should have." His voice was steady, unhurried, and Clara felt a strange comfort in its honesty. "Tell me what happened," he added. Clara took a deep breath. She recounted the past months. Her husband's illness, the debts that mounted, the empty cupboards, the long nights walking with Daniel in her arms, and the doors that closed in her face. She spoke softly but without shame, each word a release. Matthew listened, never interrupting, only nodding occasionally, his expression thoughtful but gentle. When she finished, he looked at her steadily. "You've done what any mother would," he said. "You've survived. That's all that matters." He gestured toward the barn. "There's work to be done, but it's honest. You'll be treated fairly. You'll have a room near the kitchen. You'll have meals. Nothing more, nothing less. Just enough to live, and to give Daniel what he needs." Clara's chest tightened. For so long, she had been trapped between hunger and pride, unable to accept help without feeling shame. But Matthew's words offered something new, respect. He wasn't giving her charity. He was offering partnership, a chance to rebuild without erasing her dignity. The weeks that followed were slow but steady. Clara cleaned, cooked, and helped around the ranch under Matthew's watchful eye. Daniel grew stronger, his cheeks filling out, his laughter echoing across the fields. At night, Clara would sit on the porch, listening to the wind through the trees, reflecting on how a single act of kindness had altered the course of their lives. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in gold and crimson, Clara realized something profound. What had begun as a desperate plea for bread had become a bridge to a new life. A life where trust could exist again, where dignity was preserved, and where hope, once nearly lost, had taken root in the warmth of a small, welcoming ranch. She looked across at Matthew, who was tending to the horses, and silently thanked him. Not just for the food, but for seeing her, not as a beggar, not as a burden, but as a person deserving of respect and a second chance. In that quiet moment, Clara understood that true kindness could feed the soul as much as it fed the body. The days on the ranch settled into a rhythm, gentle and steady, like the slow sway of the wheat in the fields. Clara woke each morning to the soft light spilling through her window, Daniel already awake, stretching and eager to greet the day. For the first time in months, she no longer feared sunrise, it no longer carried the weight of hunger or uncertainty. The little house, once foreign and intimidating, had become home. Matthew moved around the ranch with the practiced ease of someone who had spent a lifetime caring for the land and its creatures. Clara watched him, learning from his calm confidence, discovering that there was a rhythm to everything, a rhythm that, if followed, made life manageable even in its hardest moments. He never asked her to work beyond her strength, never reminded her of her past struggles. Instead, he offered guidance, patience, and trust, as if simply believing in her was the most important thing he could do. Daniel's laughter became a soundtrack to their days, ringing out as he chased the chickens across the yard or helped Clara carry water from the well. Sometimes he would run to Matthew, tugging at his hand, demanding attention in the simplest, most honest way. And Matthew, once distant and reserved, began to soften, lifting the boy into his arms, teaching him the names of the horses, the proper way to feed the chickens, and the gentle art of caring for another living thing. Clara worked beside Matthew, tending to the garden, mending fences, and preparing meals. She found a quiet pride in the labor, knowing it contributed to something larger than herself. Each day was a small victory, a repaired gate, a row of thriving vegetables, a clean barn. And in those victories, she discovered that her pride could coexist with gratitude. She could accept help without losing herself. She could give her child a safe home without surrendering her dignity. One crisp evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara sat on the porch with Daniel asleep beside her, resting against her shoulder. Matthew joined her, leaning on the railing, watching the sky bleed into shades of orange and violet. For a long while, they sat in comfortable silence, listening to the soft rustle of the wind and the distant lowing of cattle. "You've done well," Matthew said quietly, his voice steady but kind. Clara turned to him, surprise and gratitude mingling in her eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you," she admitted softly. He shook his head. "No," he said. "You did this. I just gave you a place to start." In that moment, Clara understood the truth of what had brought them together. It had not been charity or pity, but respect, trust, and the simple willingness to help without diminishing the one being helped. That realization settled over her like sunlight warming the fields, steady, powerful, and life-giving. Weeks turned into months, and the ranch became more than a refuge, it became a home filled with laughter, work, and hope. Clara and Daniel thrived, and Matthew, once a solitary figure bound to the land, found companionship and purpose in watching them grow. What had begun as a desperate plea for bread had blossomed into something richer, a family forged by kindness, resilience, and the quiet strength of one man willing to honor pride as much as need. And on that ranch, with the wind carrying the scent of grass and earth, Clara realized that hunger had been filled, not just with food, but with hope, trust, and the promise of a life renewed.